thank you all for coming. We'll wait till 6 o'clock is my deal, but thank you all for coming out tonight and being here. And we'll get started here in about a few seconds, unless we can go ahead and get started now. We good?
You're the mayor.
Okay, well, that's what they tell me. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome to our city council meeting for November 12th, 2019. We're on the cusp of 6 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ortega.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Lauer.
Here.
Councilmember Thompson. Here. Councilmember Koch. Councilmember Applegate.
Here.
Councilmember Geek.
Here.
All 7 members present.
Okay, can you guys hear me through the mic? You can? Okay, all right. Usually it's a little bit louder. Okay, so we're going to go right into it. I hope everyone had a good Halloween with your families, and if you have kids and you went out and had a safe night for that, I do want to thank the PD. We had officers out driving around and pulling people over and giving candy. So it was a fun night, and yeah, it was a good night. It was and you know what? I heard a lot of good things, and it just made the families feel a lot safer out there with the police just patrolling the area, having a good time too. So thanks to everybody who was out doing that. Our first thing we have tonight is for our presentations. We're going to skip some things and move some things around here. We have 2 proclamations and a presentation. We're going to move the presentation up first, and we are not going to be doing a Red Ribbon Week proclamation tonight. So in the interest of why everybody's here tonight, I want to present Mr. John Trilch, who's going to do the presentation of a Gold Star Military Appreciation Banner to Miss Kayla Coletti, wife of Sergeant Joseph Coletti. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, City Council members, members of the public. I'm John Trilch. I'm the city's Community Engagement Manager. I'm also here tonight as a veteran. It is my sincere honor to introduce a very special member of the Fountain community this evening, Miss Kayla Coletti. And she's joined here by her father, Steve, and her daughters, Aria and Lena, excuse me. We also have representatives from Fort Carson's 71st Ordnance Group, led by Colonel David Green and Sergeant Major Strickland, Command Sergeant Major Strickland, and their spouses. So Kayla contacted the city a few months ago, and she was inquiring about the city's Military Appreciation Banner program. As you all know, the city has a program which recognizes and honors the service of our active duty military members serving our nation and who reside or have immediate family members who reside here in Fountain. Sponsored by family members and then developed and produced by the city, we hang these banners proudly up on power poles along Highway 85-87. And many of you can see some of those banners that we've had up over the last year out there on the highway. So Kayla, she saw our sample banner, the banner that's right outside the door here, I believe, to the council chambers, and she reached out to us about having a banner done for her husband to recognize her husband, Joey. Sergeant Joseph Coletti served with the 62nd EOD Company, 242nd EOD Battalion, 71st Ordnance Group. On March 22nd, 2019, Joseph Coletti was killed in action during combat operations in Afghanistan. I asked Kayla if she would come tonight so that we could present his banner to her, a Gold Star Military Appreciation Banner. On behalf of a grateful community, on behalf of fellow veterans, on behalf of fellow Americans. The rendering on the Gold Star banner that's here in front of you is a rendering of the Gold Star service flag. It's included as an element of this appreciation banner. It has stood as a symbol of service and sacrifice since World War I. It is emblazoned on this banner to remind all of us of the price that has been paid in the cause of freedom. This banner will be displayed on Highway 8587 in a place of Kayla's choosing. Mayor Ortega will now offer a few additional words.
You know, when this concept of the banner came up and Councilmember Thompson really worked hard with staff to figure out a way we could honor our veterans and people who do what you all do every single day. And it's nothing to you. You signed up for it and you do it because it's just what you're calling. And people like me who didn't have that calling, I went and did something else. Appreciate that so much. As a son of a Vietnam veteran, I got to spend some time this weekend up in the mountains with my dad and some of his old Vietnam veteran buddies, and to see, 40 some odd years later, the brotherhood still stands. Is a testament to what the audience we have tonight, and regardless of what happens when you guys are out doing what you have to do, the fact that you are still here tonight, when you have your own families to go home to, and all the other things that you guys deal with outside of being a soldier, is a testament to what we are so proud of here in the city of Fountain, and I do appreciate everything that, and I speak for everybody up here, we appreciate everything that you guys do for us every day, and know that it doesn't go unnoticed, especially in this city. It's something we take very much pride in this city, because it's it's closely tied to how we even became a city, because of Camp Carson and everything that goes along with it. And those of us who have been here for quite some time have some reason why that camp or in Fort Carson now have brought us to this part of the world, and one of the best places to be as well, I think. So I do appreciate all that you've done for us, and thank you for coming out. To Kayla and family, we respect you and appreciate you and the sacrifice you guys had to make in giving that up with your husband and father, and know that again, that doesn't go unnoticed as well, and it's for me, that's it's something I take home every day, and I talk to my family about, and when we pray at night, we thank the service for all that all of you have done, and especially those that have made that ultimate sacrifice and doing the good that you guys do every day. And ladies, please don't understand I include everybody when I say that, but again, so with the Gold Star Appreciation Banner, we're going to be hanging that somewhere along 85, 87, and so that will be up for quite some time, and we just want to make sure that everyone sees it and understands what that's for, and can't thank Joey enough for the work that he did for us. So if you would all indulge me for a second and please rise for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Colonel Green and members of the 71st Ordnance Group, again, we thank you for coming out this evening. I know when you lose someone that's close to you, and especially in the circumstances you did, it's a very tough loss, and it's like losing one of your own family members. And we appreciate everything that you guys have done and sacrificed for each other, and again, sacrifice for us as well. And so thank you all for being here tonight to support Kayla and the girls and Joey's family as we continue to move forward and try to get over this loss. But know that the loss is not for a bad reason. It was for a really good reason, and for the liberty that we stand for every day, and the freedoms that we enjoy. And even in the midst of all the political crap and things that are going on above us and in those other places, when we have people here that do what you do, it makes me happy that we're here. And tonight I feel the safest I do in a long time sitting here with you all here. So thank you for coming again. And then Kayla, again, you and your family, I do send you my prayers, my family's prayers along with you, and hope that one day the hurt will be lessened. I know it'll never go away, but I hope that hurt will be lessened, and you will understand the reason why that happened, and we're all in it with you. And if you ever need anything from any of us, please don't hesitate to ask. And I think that this is a testament here of what you have standing behind you. So I think if that is it, are we going to do any presentation or anything? Or Oh, okay. She's right behind you. Okay, we're going to do a quick picture. Once again, also I would be remiss if I didn't say this, but thank you to the VFW for coming out and support as well. And I couldn't think of a better day to do this right after our Veterans Day. And again, thank you all to the sacrifices and services you make for our community and this great nation. Let's please give a round of applause for Kayla and her family. Okay, and we'll take a few moments. If anybody would like to say anything to the family, you may go up real quick. And then soldiers, if you guys are allowed to leave, it'd probably be a good time. Because the rest of this meeting is going to be pretty boring. So we'll take a couple minutes. Let me get my agenda. Okay, the next item or proclamation is proclamation declaring November 30th, 2019 as Small Business Saturday. I was requested by, I think her name was Pam Wu, with the Small Business Association to just present this proclamation for Small Business Saturday. I think we're going to go ahead and skip the reading of it. If you've all read it, I think we're okay with that. If we can just have a motion to approve the proclamation. We do this every year. Mr. Geek? And Mr. Lauer?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve proclamation declaring November 30th as Small Business Saturday. Please vote.
Light's not working, so.
We try again.
Okay, try again.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, and again, we are skipping Red Ribbon Week. Since that was 2 weeks ago, it seems kind of lacking to try to do a proclamation 2 weeks after the fact. So we do support Red Ribbon Week, and all that's involved is just for the sake of business and moving forward. We'll keep going. Item number 4B, Board Commission Committee appointments. We have the reappointment of Paul Aragon and Leslie Luzon Keller to the Fountain Herbal Renewal Authority. Ms. Bailey, how are you?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'm a little short for the mic. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Where'd John go? Appreciate a few minutes of your time. We do have 2 new reappointments recommended for the Urban Renewal Board. One is Pastor Paul Aragon of Restoration Church. This will be his second 5-year term serving with us. He's been a great ambassador. He's been very proactive in some of the movement in the Old Town District on our behalf. So we are highly recommending him. He is unable to be with us because he's actually serving a sabbatical abroad right now. So he will be back in a couple of weeks. So we are recommending him, as well as Leslie Luan Keller. She actually was fulfilling only 7 months of a remaining term of somebody that had to depart our board because of a health matter. So under our state statute and our code and compliance, we need to reappoint her formally for a full 5-year term under the urban renewal regulation. So those 2 appointments have been put before you, as well as their applications. If there's any questions, be more than glad to answer anything you may have.
Okay, the only question I have, so like when I was appointed to council, I didn't get to. That was my whole term, even though it wasn't a full term. So is that a full term for her, that 7 months, or does she still get to do 2 full terms? Do you understand what I'm saying?
So a term is 5 years under the regulations of the board. She only fulfilled less than 9 months of the term that was remaining, so she actually has to be reappointed for a full continued 5-year term, which would be her full first term. So she was putting in a shadow of a vacant seat until her appointment period was.
So she can still do
valid.
2 full terms.
She can.
Okay. Yeah, that's more my question. I'm sorry, because had I wanted to, I don't know why I would have, but I was only able to do still the 2 terms as council member. I couldn't do a 3rd, even though I was only doing.
Are you saying
sense?
as your account, like seated here as counselor versus
Yeah,
the
no.
board?
When I was seated as a council member, I was appointed after a year, and so it didn't allow me to. School board, they do that there, and so someone was able to do 3 terms consecutively. On
Yes,
it, so.
and it's a little different
Okay,
for the urban renewal
Okay.
authority structure.
Good, because I know she does really good work, and we don't want to. If she's willing to stay on that long, let's keep her. So.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
we totally agree with that recommendation. Yes.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's my recommendation. Okay. Yeah, I know. If no questions, what would board like to do with these reappointments? Ms. Thompson
Move to approve both members for renewal.
and Mr. Lauer.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Council agenda requests and announcements. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, sorry.
Excuse me. Yeah, I did have a couple things. Since this is my 2nd and a half before last meeting, I did want to take the opportunity and I want to give a shout out to a few people. And I'm going to do half today, pardon me, half next council. But for starters, I really would like to thank the residents of Cumberland Green. And I say that because before I came in on council, I was the president of Cumberland Green, in which I believe a majority of my support came from my constituents there Also, I'd like to thank also the constituents of Ward 2. I'd like to thank the Planning Department, Finance Department, Utilities, Courts, Streets, Parks and Rec, clerks, you know, Joni and Sandy, Rosa. They've been instrumental in keeping me in line on a lot of things, and I really like to thank them because of the knowledge that they actually bring to the game. The fire department, I'm glad that we were able to go through a lot of transitions together, and I think right now we're in the best place that we could possibly be, and which I've seen a lot over the course of the years. And you know, Chris, I want to thank you for that, and that's the only thank you you're going to get from me today because I'm saving you for later. But our FD, the men and women of the department, they continue to do a phenomenal job, especially with all the stress that they've endured over the course of the past few years. I'd like to also thank Economic Development, FURA. You guys have been instrumental, and I'll go into more details next meeting. But a lot of my greatest accomplishments, I believe, they centered around economic development, FURA, and public safety. And I'll touch in on a lot of those projects next council meeting. I'd like to thank Jim Heckman, Sam Heckman. Sam Heckman was really one of the ones that pushed me into doing this. I would also like to thank Al Lenders. I would like to thank Deborah Stout. I'd also like to thank Donna Lachey, Ernest and Andrea Coleman. And while that list of names may seem somewhat strange to some of you, you know, it's people like that, in my opinion, make us work hard as council. It's people like that when we have the opportunities to hear their voice, their ideas, and to actually listen to them, because there's some credence behind a lot of things that they say. And over the course of the years, these have been some of my biggest foes. and as time went on, I've had so much. I have so much respect for these few individuals that I just listed. Curtis, I'd like to thank you. You know, the greatest friendship I had, utility side, would have to be Larry Patterson. And I don't think a lot of people realize how close Larry Patterson and I were. Larry and I were pretty doggone close. Matter of fact, his last day, he brought me a very expensive bottle of wine. And wherever Larry is, I'd like to thank him if he's still in Hawaii, because he brought a lot of insight to me. I'd like to thank the Lippincots that aren't here. Daryl Couch, his wife. I'm save Patty, because hopefully I was going to do Patty tonight, but she's not here. So Karen, if you could just let her know that I have some words I'd like to give for her. But I you know, really like to thank a lot of you. And like I said, a lot of people I didn't mention tonight. Sometimes the best comes last. I don't know, but that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Geek. Mr. Applegate.
Yeah. I'd like to thank all the people that supported me in this last election. It was wonderful, and it was a good time. Also, I've been looking into the fact that we have one of our buildings in town that has a name on it of a person who's still alive. That's rather inappropriate for government buildings. And I think it would be really wise of us to not have that on there. And I'd like to see the council take that up and see if we can do something about that and maybe remove it and maybe eventually find a more worthy person who gave their full sacrifice to have their name on that building. That's all.
Okay. Mr. Koch.
I just would like to thank the council for putting up with me, because I have been sick and I've had my foot amputated, and it's been an ongoing process. And I just wanted to thank everybody for their consideration and they're putting up with me during that time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Mr. Lauer?
Well, in keeping with the whole spirit of gratitude, I do want to appreciate, say how much I appreciate everything that was, that all the work you did to put together the ceremony yesterday, Sharon. Thank you very much. And coming out, everybody that came out and braved a ridiculous amount of cold yesterday, to just show a little bit of love and honor for those who served. As somebody who swore that oath a couple different times, it's really kind of heartwarming to see people from the community come out and support folks. And then it's nearly impossible to sit here without crying and look at somebody whose family is still dealing with the loss of a service member. So thanks very much for that. And then in a 180-degree turn, not only is it the season for being grateful to folks who are still sacrificing, it's also the season to remind everybody to be on the lookout. Today I got to read about a half a dozen stories on different scams that are going around specifically targeting veterans and people who care for veterans. Two of the big ones are people calling up saying that they're from Wounded Warrior and giving you the ability to let them have access to your bank, and they are not from Wounded Warrior. And then people calling up saying that they represent the Red Cross and that a service member needs to get home in an emergency and they don't have the money to do so. Can you help out? That's just two of the at least a dozen different scams targeting veterans and service members right now. So please be on the lookout for that kind of stuff. I would recommend just please be suspicious if anybody calls you with that, and then go directly to the organizations themselves if you so choose to support them. But other than that, and thanks to Mayor Pro Tem Thomas for always keeping it up there in the spirit of gratitude. Thanks. That's it for me.
Okay, Ms. Thompson?
Well, thank you, Greg, for that. And I was going to thank the staff for their help, Connie, and everybody for the help with the Veterans Day program. And it was fantastic to see the police explorers out there and the fire department and police department. Thank you for coming and supporting. And I think we actually, as cold as it was, we probably had one of the largest groups we've had to that event in a while. So when people wonder why we don't have a full-blown 45-minute ceremony on a year when it's 60 degrees and it sounds wonderful, they can remember yesterday when it was like, 25 degrees and the wind was blowing. It was pretty chilly out there. So that's why we do it. On that spirit, it was really exciting to go on Friday, if you ever get a chance to be invited, to the Fountain Valley Senior Center Veterans Day program they do. It is a fantastic program that's put on by people that go to the Senior Center to honor the veterans, and it was so heartwarming to have the whole every senior in the Senior Center, the place was packed, standing up at the top of their lungs singing "God Bless the USA" and waving their arms in the air, and so patriotic. That's the strength of our country, as our seniors and the people that participated in the war. And a lot of them are wives that are left. Their veteran husbands are gone. But so if you ever get a chance to do that, it was really, really good to be there. So that was good. And on Greg's note, I took a class through CIRSA, came in, and Paul helped me use a laptop here. And it's really worth your while. It's for elected officials and looking for fishing and spearfishing and whaling. I didn't even know those terms on emails. So it would be worth your time to take an hour and take that CIRSA class and learn how to look for stuff, the emails that do look official, and how they very quickly make them look unofficial, and ways to check on stuff that Greg's fully aware of, but the rest of us in the world, thank heavens, are not. So, and I'll stop on that. Thank you.
Okay. I did want to also announce that the build grant was awarded to a lot of projects that were up in here in the county. Specifically, I think Charter Oak Ranch Road did get a part of that. However, the portion that was supposed to go to the new rail yard didn't get that grant. So there's still a lot of work to be done there, but I do want to thank Senator Gardner, who personally called me. I was kind of surprised with that, and told me about the awarding. And then Lamborn as well, Congressman Lamborn, for really pushing the issue out in Washington and getting that passed through. At least we got a lot of good projects coming across a lot of this part of the county as well. So really happy about that and where we are on that. Just another announcement for next week is our next council meeting. We moved it up because of Thanksgiving break and the possibility that a lot of people might be gone, so we just moved it up to next week. And then next Friday at 6 o'clock on the 22nd is our annual Christmas tree lighting at Mayor's Park. So make sure you have that down on your calendar and ready to go. I do want to address Richard's comments about the naming of the building and things like that. I don't know what the process would be for that or removing. That's something we'd have to look at. I can tell you I'm 100% not in support of that. Whether whatever reason it happened, or how that building became about, it did. But to, I think, bring this town back of steps because we don't like a person or whatever that is, I think
wasn't
is
the reason.
it doesn't matter. I think just to do something like that is not only disingenuous, but I think it's wrong. And I would not support that. I'm just going to let everybody know now so that I just think that takes us back for whatever reason that is. There's many places that name buildings and fields and things after people who are still alive. It's a personal philosophy. So I can just tell you that's where I stand on that issue, and if you want to take that forward and figure out how to work that and deal with the public and what they want to say about it, you can do that as well, but I can tell you I'm not in favor of that. So as far as that goes, we are done with city council agenda requests. We have public to be heard. Citizens may address the council on items that are not on the agenda. We ask that you sign up with the clerk prior to the meeting, and council may not be able to provide an immediate answer. But we'll direct staff to follow up, and out of respect for the council and others in attendance, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Lojinos Gonzalez, tonight representing VFW 6461. Just a couple things. Great ceremonies yesterday, I think, for the American Legion, the VFW, and then the City of Fountain. So I was very glad to be able to observe all those events yesterday. Just a couple things for us. On the 17th and 24th of November, we still have the Girl Scouts coming out for their Gold Award project, similar to an Eagle Scout project for the Boy Scouts. And she could take volunteers to help her. That's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the 17th and the 24th over at the VFW. And then the Thanksgiving dinner, which will be served at the VFW on the 28th, will be from 2 to 4 p.m. And then as a county commissioner, I just wanted to thank all the members, Jim, Phil, council members, for your time serving and doing a great job for the City of Fountain. As you come off the board, I just want to thank you for your service, and to thank the incoming council members. Just in case I'm not here in the next meeting or two, I plan to be so. But if not, I just wanted to thank you personally for all the great service and work that you guys have done. So thank you very much.
Commissioner, if I won't see you next council meeting, I'd like to thank you as well. I would also like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to work on a couple boards for you during this transition that I'm doing. And so I think you have done one hell of a job stepping in, representing us in the southern quarter of the county.
Thank you, and I
mean
appreciate that.
from the bottom of my heart, and I wish you the very best, but this won't be goodbye for us because we will be seeing each other.
No, I'm going to find more things for you to do for us.
Now, brother,
He's gonna have a lot more free time.
Thanks.
I had something in mind when you were talking and I lost it. I don't remember what it was. There was something you were saying and I needed to add on to it and I forgot what it was. So if I remember, I'll come back to it. What's that? No, it doesn't matter. We'll get back to it if it comes up. Ms. Meininger.
Deborah Stout-Meininger, community advocate, citizen scientist. Today I want to really caution people with what all I've seen on TV about the the Black Fridays and the worldwide Black Fridays and all these companies in China is looking for everybody's business. Beware. There's a lot of people that are going to be just ordering things willy-nilly online on their cell phones because it's so convenient, but that's a good way to get ripped off. I would caution people to use a little more brick and mortar stores, especially during the holidays when the scams are going to be in full tilt, trying to get people's information. Also, on the subject of the vapor pens, those have only been out a very short period of time, just a few years. The damage that they are doing to our young people is the tip of the iceberg. Since I work at the Tomahawk truck stop, and God bless them, they allow everything that those vendors will find room to put in there. And when I watch the pouches and the gum and the toothpicks, as well as the vapor pens, they are targeting the young people. The young people who will be the most aggressive users of it, and the stronger they are, the harder the addiction is to the nicotine. Also, it's very easy to put additives into those liquid pods. One thing I found out was an expose on Channel 5 near the end of October, second, third week in October. I was watching about 4 o'clock in the morning. I have weird hours. So I was watching it, and they had an expose that they went over to China because when they were trying to research who was manufacturing the vapor pen assembly, the liquids for it, as well as the batteries, which are lithium-type batteries, and they need toxic rare earth minerals in them to work. All of those are manufactured in China. 99% of what we have on the market here in the States is from them, and our FDA has not been watching what's in them. I see concentrations of not just the 0.3 milligrams that they're supposed to limit the cigarettes to, but 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.9 in the concentrations in the same cylinders. And when a teenager can stand around with his friends and go through an entire tube that says 0.9 milligrams of nicotine, that's looking for it. Plus, they have formaldehyde and ammonia in them. Formaldehyde for the vapor product, and the ammonia to make the nicotine more palatable. And only the places that are selling them from California have any of that information on the packages. And they have it so tiny, I almost had to get out a magnifying glass in addition to my glasses in order to read it. So you know nobody's reading that out there. And I'm trying to put together some information to hopefully pass out to the PTAs and to the schools, because yes, we need to take an aggressive picture of this, because there's a lot of kids and adults who are very damaged and just haven't gotten to the point where they're going to be hospitalized yet. And those statistics, unfortunately, will be coming in like waves on a high tide, on and off. So if you know anybody who's using vapor pens, no matter what their age, not only say no, but hell no. Do not let them use it, whatever you can do to discourage it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I have no other cards unless anybody else would like to get up. Okay, we'll move on to our consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be approved with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen requests, in which case the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately at the discretion of the council. We have items A and B. Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to approve the consent agenda, not unless someone would like to discuss an item.
And Mr. Geek.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
All right, item 8, old business. We have nothing from old business tonight, so we'll move into 9, new business. We'll skip over to 9B. I'm opening a public hearing in Resolution 19-060, a resolution adopting a City of Fountain 3-mile plan for 2019. Ms. Martinez.
Good evening. The item before you is the resolution adopting the City of Fountain 2019 3-mile plan. This plan is required by state statutes, which limits the ability for cities to extend their boundaries no more than 3 miles in any direction in any given year. And this plan must be updated annually per the statutes. The 3-mile plan was previously adopted in November of 2018. And then for this current year plan, it was published and public notification included in the Fountain Valley News. This is the current plan. So it does, the blue line does show the 3 miles outside the existing city boundaries, with Fort Carson being directly west. And then this is the annexation plan that also shows the 3-mile plan, 3-mile boundary surrounding the city limits. Staff finds that the plan previously adopted by the Comprehensive Development Plan pursuant to state statutes is compliant with that regulation. The 3-mile plan depicted in the annexation plan is also compliant with that, and there have been no changes to the plan since 2018. This item was presented at Planning Commission in the October 21st meeting, and they did recommend approval, and staff would also make a recommendation of approval tonight for Resolution 1960.
Okay. Any questions for Christy and staff? Okay, since it is a public hearing, does anybody in the public have questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And what would council like to do with this item? Mr. Geek, sorry.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 19060.
And Mr. Koch. Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay. Item 9C, we are not going to do tonight. Do you want me to explain it? You want to, Ms. Huffman? Or Mr.? Okay. We're just not doing it tonight for...
That's correct, Mr. Mayor and Council. This was one that I was excited to present tonight, but because of the publication requirements, we didn't really get it published in advance of what should have been a public hearing, and so we'll get that on the agenda for the first meeting in December. But I just wanted to introduce it. We have.
Should I read it into the? Can I read it in? No. Okay, go ahead.
No, and I just wanted to put it on your radar that we'll be having a new. What this item would have been would be just a adoption of the city's codification of the code. So it's the culmination of some exciting work. Basically taking all of our ordinances that have been passed into the city code and putting it into a single document. And so we'll have that document available that'll be present on the 10th if anyone from council or the public would like to see it. And look for a publication as well in the near future. So not tonight, but
I heard twice say code, the word code twice, and exciting twice.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to clear that up. Okay.
I'll say exciting a lot more times. So it's very exciting.
Okay.
So I'll tell you all about it in December.
Okay. We'll be waiting with bells on. So just again for clarifying purposes, this was supposed to be a public hearing, and since we didn't notice it properly, we have to give it 15 days. And since our next meeting is in less than 7, we have to put it off until the first meeting in December. So hopefully you're all as excited as we are. Okay. Item 9D, Resolution 19-063, a resolution amending the appropriation of fiscal year 2019. When Mr. Lewis gets untangled, he'll start the presentation.
Good evening, City Council. John Lewis, City of Fountain Finance Director. As indicated in the commentary that you received in advance and for the benefit of the citizens listening to this recording, I'm here to ask for a supplementary budget approval for the 2019 budget. Now, you first approved the 2019 budget on December 11 of last year, and since then additional expenditures have been required, and according to Colorado State regulations, we cannot expend those dollars without your approval. Some of the reasons for the additional required expenditures include unexpected vendor cost increases, building and equipment repairs from damage caused by last year's hailstorms, property taxes that were abated by the El Paso County assessor, additional street resurfacing projects that we were able to complete this year, and the need for additional winter uniforms for our volunteer fire personnel. Now, on the screen, and I hope I'm going to push the right button here for, yep, there it goes. On the screen here, you'll note the details of the needs included in the supplemental request. The first item here, $770,000, is for building and facility repairs from the hail damage. Now, that was primarily covered by insurance, but insurance that we received last year. And now we have knowledge of those costs. We did not include them in the budget until we were sure what those costs would be. We also received $328,193.89, as you can see in revenue here in the general fund, as part of those insurance proceeds. In addition, we also have $130,000 of vehicle repairs from the hail, and we have $36,000 of hail damage to parks vehicles. And again, those insurance funds were received in 2018. The vehicles were repaired in 2019. And now that we know what the cost is, we're asking to add those to the budget. In addition, you'll notice that we have higher costs in insurance. So we have insurance for detainees and some other insurance costs that increased. $40,000 here on line 13 is for ADA playground equipment at Aga Park. We had $15,000 that we received in a grant last year, so now we're able to upgrade that equipment. In addition, we have additional water, electric, and sewer utility costs for parks. It was higher than what was forecast. And we have $2,200 in radio user fees that went up. I think I've got all of them except the $20,000 and higher than normal year level abatements in code enforcement, and a $10,000 replacement for radar speed check trailer that was run into by somebody else, by a citizen. And so we were paid for insurance on that, but we need to replace it. We also have $16,000 for a contract grant writer and IGSA contracting officer. Now that covers the general fund. So we have a total of $1,069,200, and the net decrease in the general fund reserves will be $741,006. And if we could scroll down just a little bit on that spreadsheet. We see that the water fund is receiving insurance proceeds of $6,655. We also have $2,000 of that contract grant writer being funded by water, another $2,000 being funded by electric, if we can continue to scroll down, and that we also received $3,554 here in insurance proceeds from CIRSA for electric department vehicles. So the expenditures that we're asking for from electric is $3,500 for an unsafe vehicle lift that needs to be replaced, and for that contract grant writer. Looking further down at the Conservation Trust Fund, we're requesting $2,500 for a fence at Aga Park. For the General Improvement District number 1, we have a refund of $8,475 of property taxes due to of an abatement that was granted by the El Paso County assessor to Walmart. Public Transportation Fund, we're asking for $37,700 for a debt service payment on a 2018 bus. And we also have in street resurfacing some additional chip seal improvements that were needed over what was initially budgeted. We were able to get some more of the chip seal improvement work done this year. So that's an additional $137,000. And that is coming out of the reserve funds in the street resurfacing fund. In the volunteer fire fund, we have $12,000 for winter jackets for personnel, $8,500 for new volunteer firefighter uniforms, winter jackets of $8,500, new volunteer firefighter uniforms of $3,500. So a total of $12,000, which will also come out of those funds. So with that, I would like to ask for your approval of the resolution number 19-063 for the supplemental budget. Again, we have the funds that are in the reserves to cover these expenditures, and I will at this point ask for any questions.
Okay, any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I'm so used to it. I got to think of something new. I'm just curious on line item 55, I don't know, 2213, $7,200 insurance for detainees.
Yes, I would like to ask Chief Heber for some help on that.
You have to get on a mic.
This one on? Okay. So we were offered at the beginning of 2019 by CIRSA for a supplemental insurance coverage, which was for medical insurance coverage for people that could potentially be injured while they're in police custody as a detainee, as a suspect. And so should something terrible happen like that, this coverage then covers our police officers and our police department for people that are in custody if they're injured while in custody. And that additional $7,200 is the total annual premium for that insurance coverage.
So they would be, if they were in our cell over it?
We don't have a cell, but
Okay.
we do detain them. We have DUIs, we have people in the police department. We do transport them from the point of pickup to the point of the jail if we're going to do that. So during that process, there are things that can happen with that insurance. That's cheap investment to cover the police department and our citizens.
But once they're in the jail,
Yes, it goes to the county.
it goes to the county and the county pays for that. Once they're booked, county takes over. Okay, all right, just want to make sure county wasn't asking us. Right.
So is the insurance, I'm a little confused. Insurance is for our cops or for the criminal or the detainee?
It's for the detainee.
Okay. So if they get hurt,
Right.
arm breaks or something,
Right,
that coverage is for that? Okay.
Exactly, because
okay.
our officers would still be covered under CIRSA.
We have CIRSA for them. Okay,
So-
yeah, okay.
Okay, and then a second one I think just might be confusing to kind of some people in the general public. You talk about in Exhibit A, you talk about code enforcement needing some money for abatements they do, and those abatements are when they go out, if someone chooses not to clean up their property for whatever reason, and we have to go out and do it, then we have to pay the people we hired it.
That is
abate it.
correct.
And then a lien, I assume, goes on the property. So we
I
can, a
could-
lien goes on the property, so.
Yes, a lien goes on the property, so we will get paid back at some point
At
when the
some point.
property is sold.
Right. In Exhibit B, you talked about we had to refund Walmart some money because of an abatement that
And
the
that's a
county
property
gave them,
tax
and I think
abatement.
that's a very confusing, and
Yes.
I understand what it is, but I think it might help people to understand what it
Yes,
is.
and that's a property tax refund because Walmart was fighting the value of the property as assessed by the El Paso County assessor. So they won a decrease in the value, whether it was through a court case or whatever, and so that is a refund in property tax, and that revenue had already been received by us, so we have to pay them back.
Right.
An
It's,
abatement, oh, go ahead.
it's just funny how the same word came
It
up
is
in
the same
very
word.
similar things, so I wanted to make sure everybody understood that,
So,
yeah.
the word abatement is two different meanings there. And the common misconception is when we do an abatement because of a code issue, some people believe that we're doing that for free. And just want everyone to know that it's not done for free. A lien, if the homeowner, whoever is there, doesn't pay for it, it does get put on as a lien. We may not get it for a while, but we're still gonna get it somehow.
That's right.
Some way. Okay. All right, just so that people understand that, because I've had a couple conversations recently on the phone that, that we're out just doing free cleanup because of code enforcement, and that is not the case, so just so people understand that. Okay, any other questions from council? Go ahead.
I was gonna bring this up later, excuse me, Gordon Rick. I was gonna bring this up later, but I would ask now. We're taking $1 million out of our general fund reserves with this resolution. With the next resolution on the next budget, we're scheduled to take another $2 million out of our reserves. What I would ask is at the second reading, staff show both the council and the public for the last 10 years, what has been our reserves, how much we've taken out, and what's the minimum requirement for the reserves for each of those years. I think we, as the public, need to be educated as to what our reserves look like going forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's an easy ask. I think just a general note, just to start that off, our general rule, I don't know that it's steadfast thing is usually 20%
That's
within the city of Fountain, but I think the legal is what's the percentage legally that we're supposed 3%, and so we've always been very conservative with our reserves. Some years we've been under that 20%, and others like this one we're in a healthy reserve right now. I think. Am I wrong to say that?
No, that is correct. And just as a clarification, what we're taking out is 741,000 because we have some revenue coming in, and the amount we're taking out is, the 770, for example, the first line item there under expenditures has already been paid to us from the insurance. So, but it's an excellent question because we constantly want to watch those reserves. And in fact, in the budget presentation that we're about to make, we show what the impact of the reserves have been since 2015. And we can go back 10 years. Happy to do that for the second reading. Tonight, we're showing the information since 2015.
Yeah.
And there is a concern, as I'll talk about in the budget presentation, that we are real careful about watching those reserve levels. We've gone up and down and up the last few years, and we want to try and focus the budgets, the biannual budget for 21 and 22 to get back closer to the 20%. We're right around 17 and a half.
Yeah.
By the end of
yeah,
2020.
I think even early on in my days on council, we were, I think, even close to 12% at a couple times. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets down there, but there's a reason why we have a
It
reserve.
got pretty low after the recession.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
so
But
that had to
again, there's a reason why we have the reserve, and it's for things unlike it's not just to keep that extra money there and not be able to use it. So
That's right.
we do have to. We just got to be careful.
General rule is citizens do not pay taxes so that we can put it in a savings account.
Right. Although a lot of people think that's what we do, if we're not spending on our own things. So, okay, anybody else? Okay. Council, what would you like to do with Resolution 19-063? Mr. Lauer
Move to approve Resolution 19-063.
and Mr. Geek.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. On to item 9D. I'm opening a public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 1741, setting appropriations for the funds, offices, and departments of the City of Fountain, Colorado for the fiscal year 2020, beginning January 1, 2020. We have Ms. Dale and Mr. Lewis.
Good evening again. John Lewis, City of Fountain Finance Director, and I'm happy to have with me Shauna Dale, Deputy Finance Director. So as indicated in the commentary that you received in advance, and for the benefit of citizens listening to the recording, we are here to present the requested 2020 budget for your approval, at least the first reading of that budget. We have prepared a PowerPoint presentation to lead you and our Fountain citizens through the major points. So as you can see from this first slide, we are beginning our presentation with a quote of our vision statement. And as you're aware, we focused our budget preparation around the city's vision statement as well as our strategic plan. I won't be reading from a lot of the slides, but I will read this vision statement. Fountain will purposefully embrace the growth occurring throughout the region and continue developing into an even more contemporary, accomplished city while maintaining its all-America hometown feel and strong sense of community. So we are going to continue on with that focus, and as you know, the city prepares a biannual budget, and we did that for 2019-2020 last year. So this hearing is related to the changes since last year that we're proposing for the 2020 budget. You first reviewed the 2020 budget on December 11 of last year, and since then we met with you on July of this year to set policy. Then August and September, city staff, finance, administration, and every department met to talk about what kind of changes might be needed or not needed. In October, we met again with you in a budget work session. And now we're having the public hearings and hopefully budget approval, because according to Colorado state regulations, we cannot expend these dollars until we have your approval. Therefore, we present this budget today in the first reading format, and we'll ask for approval of that and your final approval in the next scheduled meeting. So here's a copy of the cover of our strategic plan, where we talked about enduring interests, strategic priorities, and strategic objectives. And this budget is synchronized with and supports the city's 3-year strategic plan. I wanted to first talk about how we align with some of those strategic priorities. And of course, one of the big priorities was improving the telecommunications technology and capabilities for our citizens. You can see with the green button there, it directly supports the strategy objective. And as we go on, there'll be some blue buttons that supports the strategic priority. So as we look at the supporting strategy objectives for telecommunications technology and capabilities, this budget supports researching and presenting options for telecommunications improvements, and the research and presenting additional objectives in support of telecommunications service. We are proceeding with those objectives. The next priority is enhancing transportation infrastructure, and you can see the items that directly support strategy objectives there are completion of the Link Road Squirrel Creek, extension of Venatucci Boulevard, which will be done by FURA from funds that we are obligated to pay FURA. The Duckwood intersection and CNS extension completion, the final wrap-up of a few details, and replacing the remaining service lines to allow for repaving of Fountain Mesa. Another one of our objectives is the distribution of public safety resources, and you can see that now we have some blue buttons supporting the strategy priorities, and as well as the green buttons. So establish a new analysis program to evaluate public safety access certainly supports the objective. The automatic vehicle location dispatch system implementation directly supports that strategy priority. the completion of remodeling Station Number 2, hiring of 3 additional firefighter paramedics, 1 patrol officer, a code officer, and an IGSA contracting and grants writing manager, the purchase of a 3rd ambulance out of Station Number 2, and the purchase of basic safety gear, including SCBA's. The final item that is a priority is improving the availability of venues supporting community activities. And certainly we're doing that with the utilities continuing projects such as landscaping demonstration garden and sponsoring our community events and irrigating Aga Park. The continuing of the community events calendar, the Adams Open Space Bridge restroom concession building at Aga Park, and an ADA playground at Aga Park, which we talked about a little bit earlier. We're going to be wrapping that up in 2020. And then finally, continuing efforts to finance and build a community recreation facility. So we'll continue that research. So those are the strategic priorities and objectives that we are addressing in this budget. To look at the actual budget overview, a summary, we have revenues of $68.3 million, total expenses of $70.3 million. It is a balanced budget because we're using transfer of reserves of approximately $2 million. Now that's throughout all of the funds to pay for those expenditures. So we are providing for some investments of things that we need to take care of. We talked a little bit earlier about some of the reserves. The general fund unassigned balance policy is 20%. You were correct at that, including the Tabor Reserve, which is 3%. And in 2015, the unassigned fund balance was 17.9%, including the Tabor Reserve. From the bottom line item here, 2015 to 2020, it ranged between 17.5% and 28%. At the end of 2020, we think the unassigned fund balance and the Tabor Reserve together will be 17.5%, as I indicated. That is below our goal. But I think it becomes clear when we look at the graph here on this next slide. You can see down on the bottom here, we have items that are committed to park improvements, assigned to public safety here. So those are not unassigned and they're not uncommitted. There's also a lower line here that is the Tabor Emergency Reserve of 3%. But this is where it's interesting. We were down here in 2015 around $2 million in unassigned reserves. Those went up to a little above $5 million by 2018, and then we are projecting that they're going to come back down to a little above $3 million. When you look at the unassigned and emergency, which is this line here, you can see that it went way up close to $6 million and down, but the problem is that's including the approximate $2 million of insurance that we received in 2018. So when we take out the insurance, this is the line we really should be looking at. And that is the orange line where we got up close to $5 million, drops down a little bit, comes back up again with insurance proceeds, drops down a little bit towards 2020. You can see that it's a little bit up and down, but what it tells us is we've got to be real conservative about looking at how we proceed into 2021 and 2022, because we need about another $500,000 to get this back up to the 20%. With that, I'd like to ask Shauna to cover some of the items on the general fund.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I'm just going to touch real quickly on some of the total overviews for all of the funds, and then real quickly on the general fund as well. For some of the things that are included in the 2020 budget, for all of the funds, we have a 2% merit increase for salaries. We also have a 1% match on the retirement contributions for employees who participate in the 457 plan. And we also include a 3% insurance increase for the medical premiums. And we're on a 5-year plan with that, and this is the 3rd year of that.
For the general fund, this just is a quick summary table that just shows the revenues and expenditures from the 2018 actuals, the 2019 amended budget, the 2019 projected to year end, the original 2020 budget from last year, and then the revisions to the 2020 budget for this year. The biggest part is you see a surplus of 1.6 million in 2018, and that was due to primarily to the insurance proceeds that we received from those two major hailstorms. In 2019, you'll notice initially in the amended budget, we were expected to pull 1.7 million from the reserves. We've actually reduced that down to 1.3 million by the end of this year, which is a savings with the expenses coming in under budget of approximately 400,000. In 2020, the initial budget was set to pull about 700,000 from the reserves. However, we've increased that by about 436,000 to 1.2 million to pull from the reserves, and I'll go over some of those highlights on the next slide. You'll also notice, though, in the 2019 estimated to year end on the revenue side, we're also looking at potentially a $500,000 increase in sales tax revenue. For the 2020 budget for the general fund, we've maintained all of our current staffing levels and also included 1 part-time streets position, 1 full-time police officer, 1 part-time code enforcement officer, and as well as transferring 1 current part-time position to a full-time position in the 4th quarter of 2020 for the Technology Services Division. On the operating expense side, you've got part of that 400,000 increase that we've got now in the 2020 revised budget. A lot of that comes to exponentially increasing costs in technology services, a lot of that due to potential cyber crime. For the police department, we've got an increase due to just employee benefit elections, as well as our contribution to the Pikes Peak Regional Training Center. On the fire department side, there's that $260,000 for replacing all the SCBA gear to get our SCBA gear up to date. And then also the addition of the asphalt spreader for the streets department to improve their efficiencies to try and help them get through their projects faster. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to John for the water fund.
As you are all aware, we did have a rate increase of 4% in 2019 on water. We're going to have another one in 2020. And we also floated a bond issue that sold very well for both. It was a joint bond issue for water and electric of $19 million in 2019. So we'll talk a little bit about where those funds are going to be spent. As far as operations, we're going to continue operations of groundwater treatment that is supported by the Air Force. We're going to have a continuation of the enterprise fleet management system for leasing vehicles. As far as the capital emphasis, where some of those bond proceeds are going to be spent, the joint utilities building, $3 million of that $10 million cost will come from the water fund. Treatment of groundwater, $1.7 million. Southern Delivery System capital, it's ongoing, $400,000. $700,000 for water rights, meter replacement of $150,000, and some of the water mains of $1.14 million. As far as the electric fund, there's a base rate increase of 3% in 2019, but there is no rate increases anticipated for the next 2 years. Again, the joint bond issue of $19 million, and some of those funds will be spent on a new substation and transmission to the tune of $3.7 million. And then the joint operation building, $7 million comes from electric for that building. As far as operations, no major changes, and they are continuing with the enterprise fleet management lease program in the fleet department. Now, you notice I talked about the $3 million and the $7 million for the joint operation building, and that comes to a $10 million joint utility facility. Again, those funds come from the bond proceeds. They're collateralized with electric and water revenues now and in the future. Those bond proceeds cannot be spent by the city on anything outside of the utilities. That brings us to moving Fountain forward. all of moving Fountain forward, as you know, is funded by a special tax, a special sales tax. The street capital, it was a special tax of 0.35 that is sunsetting, and the revenue assumes at this point only 12,000 of interest income. Nothing is budgeted to be spent. We're going to wait, based on the outcome of the ballot initiative. We think we'll have about 700,000 left over at the end of the year, and it'll be your decision then in 2020 how we spend that. But we will not have any other expenditures. After that, there'll be no major funds available to make any major improvements to our roads. We do have the 0.15% continuing for street resurfacing, and the planned expenditures towards street improvements for resurfacing and drainage will be utilized as revenue is generated. In addition, we have funds for transit, and the 0.25% that goes to public transportation. We have about 805,000 of expenses, and that includes some new bus shelters with a partial offset of a federal grant. Looking at some of the other funds, ambulance, positive operating results before depreciation and capital. We are investing, as we mentioned earlier, in a new ambulance to the tune of $350,000, partially funded from reserves. Conservation Trust Fund. We have planned expenditures in Aga Park improvements, Adams Open Space, all funded with lottery proceeds. The Insurance Fund, increase of 3% contribution by employees for third year in a row to assist with covering this approximate $3.7 million expenditure. Now you have the details on the GID funds, volunteer fire, drainage, and some of the other smaller funds. No major changes from the initial budget were anticipated, and so there's no large changes there, and the details of which, as I said, you have. So at this point, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. A couple things I do want to make note. First of all, thanks to you and Shauna for doing this. I envy Mayor Pro Tem and Jim that this is their last time they have to deal with budget, and I can't wait for the day. To get into this type of thing and do it as well as you guys do and keep us moving forward. And on the straight and narrow, I appreciate everything that you do for us and in moving this budget process.
We have a great team we're proud of.
Yeah. I do want to make a comment in regards to the failed road tax, and I've seen a lot of comments and I've heard a lot of different things about tons of misconceptions about and misinformation that has been put out as to being able to fund our streets and fund anything for that matter. Streets is just the hot topic issue right now, but tomorrow it'll be something different, and the day after that it may be something totally different from that. And until this community decides that they want to help pitch in to fix these things, nothing's going to be done. It's not something as simple as we're just going to take care of it. It's not that simple. It's not as simple as getting rid of staff members to fix roads. You can't do that. There's not enough money in either pot to be able to do that. So the notion that we need to live within our means, or we need to do something special that I can magically do at my own home, that why can't you guys do it? It doesn't work that way. There's so many factors that move a budget like ours and moving forward, and it's something that the staff, it's something that this council does not take seriously or lightly. It comes out of my pocket just as much as it does anybody else's as a resident of this community. So I'm highly disappointed that the people didn't see the need to pitch in a little bit for this tax initiative. But it is what it is, and so we'll continue moving forward, and we'll make do with what we have. And again, with the rising costs of construction, rising costs of materials, rising costs of everything, it's going to make it a lot tougher. And so I just want to go on record as I'm highly disappointed that we ended where we did. I don't like having to pay extra money for things either, but at the end of the day, I know I got to pay for things every once in a while, and if I want the services and goods that I want, I need to be able to put the money up. I know it's not an easy ask of a lot of people as well. I get that, and I respect your decision to go against that. But if you chose not to go with this initiative because of the misinformation, I encourage you to read the facts correctly and thoroughly and understand what the process is. And if you don't understand the process, come in and ask. There's people that do this every single day and go through this every single day that can sit there and explain what the real process looks like and how it's not as easy as let's take from one pot to the other, because that pot now doesn't have the money they need. So and again, in today's rising costs and the cost of living that's going up in the state, we're in for a bear to see how we're going to cover our streets. So we'll see. You guys made a decision. Now we have to live with it. So that's my comments on that. Anybody else have any questions or comments on the budget?
Just a comment. We in finance are always happy to sit down and explain the financials and where the money goes to anybody. Right. And our financials are audited, and the financial audit is posted on our website. So
yeah,
if citizens do have questions, give us a call.
There's nothing, and the magic word is transparency, as if we're not being transparent, which is utterly ridiculous that we're not being transparent. I think we go above and beyond to try to be as transparent as we want. Oftentimes, when those who say we're not being transparent, they're just not getting the answer they want, and so sometimes we don't get the answers we want, and we got to move forward with what the reality is. And so, everything's in public purview. If you want to ask and find out, you're more than 100% welcome to come in and ask for that information, and we'll gladly give it to you. We have nothing to hide. I've been accused of padding my coffers. I don't even know what a coffer is. And so, these notions that we're doing things for ourselves up here is totally and utterly wrong. And so, I encourage those who question what we do and the manner in which we do it. We're a wide open book. Come on and look. I challenge you to do it more than anything, rather than use social platforms to spew misinformation. I think it would be better of you to come in and see what the real fact is. Okay. I see no lights right now. I will get back to council. Mr. Rick, you had something you wanted to say? It is I think we're in a public hearing. We are.
Gordon, Rick, this is going to be a hard ask as compared to an easy ask. Following up on your comments, Mr. Mayor, what I asked, and I talked to Scott about this already, he's got a pie chart that breaks down our expenditures by department for the budget. What I would ask is if we could add a column to show what our regulatory requirements are for each department. For example, is it a federal law, a state law, a federal regulation, a state regulation for the police department? How much of that do our chiefs have to spend because the law says they have to spend it, and how much is truly discretionary? Talking to the public, there's this big perception that we just have a pot of money, and like you said, we can just move it around wherever we want. The law requires us to do specific things, and I think we need to educate the public on exactly how much money the law says we have to spend in certain areas.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good point. Okay. Ms. Thompson?
I wanted to go back and ask a question about the budget. Novel. When we talked about spending money on the reserves, I know none of us up here spend that money lightly. We don't think it's our money. We know it's not our money. And so we're very cautious to pull money out of reserves. You know me. Anyways, but one of the things I want to make sure that people understand is that when we pull money out of reserves, we cannot in good conscience use that for salaries. That's money we have to replace, money we can't depend on for raises or something like that. So if we're pulling money out of reserves, it's to purchase something that is pretty much an immediate need in a department.
Well, and a good example that we talked about during the work session was the $260,000 for SCBA's.
Right, and SCBA's, very similar to the word scuba, because it's an air device that our fire department uses. It is a vital thing for them to have. If the SCBAs are not working, we're putting our firefighters at risk every time they go out on a call, because we never know when they're going to be going into a burning building. And that's the piece of the mask that has to seal really well around their face so that they can walk out of that fire safely and go home to their families. So that is something that couldn't be put off. We can't purchase some this year, some next year. They were all worn out and at the end, way past the end of their life expectancy. So, to pulling the money out of reserves for that could be saving us some more money if, in terms of if, God forbid, we lost a firefighter on the job because they inhaled too much smoke or toxic fumes. Because the toxic fumes of stuff that's in your carpet, your furniture, everything, it is very scary for officers to be breathing when they go in that. So it's important things that we're purchasing that maybe we dip in the reserves a little bit, but it's something that's going to pay off in the long run.
And just to add on to that, oftentimes they're one-time purchases, so it's not something that can be ongoing. It's too hard to, like you said, to replace that, and so you will use a reserve money oftentimes for a one-time purchase that comes up. We got to do it. Sorry, so that's why we have it.
And one of the confusing things about government accounting is it's like your checkbook. So if you go out and buy an asset in a normal company, those people that do bookkeeping for their own private companies, they capitalize it and only expense a certain amount per year. Well, with government accounting, we have to show it all as an expenditure in the year that it was purchased, just like you would in your checkbook if you went out and bought a car.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions on the budget? Any questions from public? It is a public hearing. Okay, I'm going to say no. So I will close the public hearing. And what would the determination of council be for this item? And again, as I'm waiting for lights, I just want to thank everybody. And if you came to the last meeting for our planning of this, it was a long meeting. But you know what? We got a lot of good stuff done, and not everybody got what they wanted. And so the public who thinks we just sign checks, you need to realize that there's some department heads that are really upset at us because we didn't give them everything they wanted. And it's not that they're, it's a reality that we all have to deal with. And while they're upset, they know that there's a bigger picture involved. So, again, thanks to everybody who was involved with that, especially council and moving us forward. I don't know whose light was on first. I'll go with Mr. Geek.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 1741.
And Mr. Lauer.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 9F, Resolution 19-062, a resolution to approve the 2020 operating plan and budget for the Norris Appletree Business Improvement District. Ms. Martinez.
The next one down.
Norris
The
Appletree.
Norris.
Norris
Oh,
Appletree.
not that one. Next one down. Again, this is the 2020 operating plan and budget associated with the Norris Appletree Business Improvement District. The property is located east of Mark Shuffle Road and south of Peaceful Valley Road and is part of the Appletree commercial development that has not yet been developed. The business improvement district is encompassed within a 1/2 acre parcel in the middle of vacant land at the moment. The district was formed in 2006 for the purpose of providing the acquisition, construction, operation, and ongoing maintenance of parking facilities, roadways, and utilities associated with that commercial development, and was established by Ordinance 1345 by City Council. City Council is required by state statute to approve the business improvement district's operating plan and budget annually. And this is the location. So Mark Shuffle Road is off to the west, and it's this little itty bitty piece right here. Peaceful Valley is at the far north end. So if you drive north on Mark Shuffle Road, it's literally a vacant field right now. However, the long-term plans for this area would have commercial development all in this area. This is Restoration Church right here. Within the 2020 operating plan, they are proposing a total mill levy of 50 mills, 30 for debt service and 20 for operations, and there was no debt planned to be incurred within 2020. Their current general fund is at $17,000. They're not anticipating any commercial development within 2020, nor are they anticipating any funding of public improvements. And again, this is not any sort of public funding through the city. This is all funding through the district itself. Staff would recommend approval of Resolution 19-060, approving the Norris Apple Tree 2020 business operating plan and budget. Are there any questions for staff?
Up to the map, because the map I was given earlier was the incorrect map.
That's a different property. BID and GID are two different items. So this is a business improvement district similar to the Riverbend Crossing Business Improvement District.
And currently, there's nothing here.
There's nothing there. It's all developer funded at this point until commercial development occurs.
They're forming a BID now?
It's already been formed in 2006.
Okay, they formed the BID. We're just
Correct.
renewing it again. And just to review, a business improvement district, the city
has no financial stake whatsoever in it. Any debt incurred by the district is the district's debt. However, state statute does provide municipal oversight as to what they can incur.
Right, but any debt they incur is
not the city. We are not the
their debt. We're not
liable for any
responsible
debt.
for it. So if you go up there and you get a receipt because you purchased something when they build one of these days, just like on Academy.
Correct.
I'm sorry,
South Academy.
Nevada.
In Nevada, yes.
Nevada area where the new Five Guys and Chick-fil-A is, and you look at your receipt, it'll have a BID, little tiny extra tax on it, and that tax is not coming to the city.
Correct.
Correct? That tax is going to the
back to the
business
developer,
improvement
to the
district, and this is how that developer is choosing to partially fund his development of that raw land or improvements, whatever the case may be.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, what would we like to do with this item? Resolution 19062. I remind you, we still have executive session in GID, so let's do something with it. Okay, Mr. Lauer
I move to approve resolution 19-062.
and Mr. Geek.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, item 9G, Resolution 19-065, directing enforcement of carport regulations adopted by ordinance 1730, affecting carports built prior to June 11, 2019. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I will apologize for bringing another carport issue to you. I know it's not everyone's favorite item, but some members of council kind of engaged with staff. Council Member Thompson, thank you very much. We're just trying to problem solve around some of the issues we've had with trying to implement these carport regulations, so tonight is just presenting one of those ideas to you. The idea is fairly simple, that the carports kind of in the period of time leading up to adopting the regulations this past June, we have in the ordinance gave them 9 months to come into compliance, and then the question is, what do we do after those 9 months? And so the resolution in front of you is to direct staff at that point, any carports that are not in compliance with their regulation, to file a notice with the clerk and recorder regarding their non-compliance, and that would be recorded against the property, so that if and when they were to sell their property, the future owner would be notified that their carport is not in compliance. And so the alternative, quite frankly, would be to go through the regular code violation procedure after the 9-month grace period, which would include going through, like any other code violation, coming through the court process, which could include fines and could include an abatement, which means tearing the carport down. And so we're kind of anticipating the day that 9-month clock runs out and how we're going to handle it. And so that's the idea that's on the table for council to consider tonight. And I think staff's here for questions and to have some discussion if you'd like about that, how to implement that and pros and cons. But that's the idea on the table now. Any questions, any thoughts?
So the ask is to see how we want to,
Force the carports that were built prior to the regulations existing.
so a record of non-compliance against each property. And that would be it?
Correct. So it would not be a lien. It would not be a formal encumbrance on the property that they would have to pay something to remove. It would be a notice. So it wouldn't be something financial that would restrict the property. But it would be a formal notification.
Okay, let's say I live in a house and I put up a carport without checking with my local building department, as I should have done in the first place, and put one up where I shouldn't have without checking. And I decide to move, and none of this happened with what we've done up till today. And when I decide to move, the buyer's finance company says, well, they have something on their property they shouldn't have. Whose responsibility is it then to fix it?
That would be between the buyer and the seller.
So potentially the buyer could say, yeah, you need to take care of it before we move in, or we're not moving in.
Yeah, exactly.
And
or decrease the price, or whatever that's between.
Okay.
them. Yeah.
because technically they would have to rectify that situation. Because I would assume if it's coming to someone's attention, then it would go back to, I guess, regional building or somebody that says they didn't do it right the first time, so they gotta fix it. Is that?
Yeah, they would either have to take steps to come into code with both us and regional building, or the seller could say, I'm gonna take it down and abate it themselves so that they have a clean sale. But that would be a discussion between the buyer and the seller.
And ultimately, and kind of this doesn't, we're not the enforcement arm for regional building, and so it's kind of putting the responsibility for homeowners to follow building code. So we're not trying to muddy the waters with regional building. You've still got to make sure that whatever structures you have on your property are consistent with what they need you to do.
Right.
We're just kind of focused on our side.
Right. There's still a lot of misconception. Even this weekend, I had someone ask, so we're not allowed to put carports at all? And I'm like, no, that's not anything that we said. And so, what's that?
400 square feet.
Right, I know, but there's still this misconception that we've just outlawed them completely and totally, when that's not the case. When, regardless of this occurring, what we've done recently, you had to come out and find out if it was even possible in your neighborhood or in your property. So, okay, I got two lights on, Mr. Geek.
Do we know how many of these properties or how many garages have been, or carports have been put up?
The carports that we're talking about prior to June 11th that fall under, that are kind of what we're talking about here today, 100?
It's approximately 150.
And
Is what affects.
that was how many fell into this category. Now, of the 150, do we know if any of them have done anything?
A few have come into compliance. There are still a significant number that have either not contacted us or have contacted us and have kind of been working through the process as to how to move forward and get it permitted properly.
Okay, so of the ones who have done what they needed to do, whichever way they did it, are we still over 100?
Yes.
With the ones who are, and I know these are general numbers and you're kind of just guesstimating here, of the ones that you know that are talking right now to fix them, where would that put us?
Probably still over 100. There's
Still be
only a
over 100.
handful of individuals who've contacted the
So
city.
plenty of people either don't care or
Don't know,
care.
or,
Well, they should know by now, right? Because didn't we send?
oh yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, they got a letter.
Okay.
Mhm.
So people are just gonna.
And
leave
they
it
have the grace period until March, so it may be very possible that they're just waiting till March to see what happens, or
And so what we're talking about here with whatever way we go is just these 100 and some odd people.
that's correct.
It only refers to the people that actually got a letter.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a quick question, going back to these 100 and something people, they're essentially being grandfathered in if they sell their property, then that sole responsibility of abating or coming into compliance goes with that new property owner. However, there's a state statute that stipulates a realtor is supposed to disclose certain information to a potential home buyer. Where does this fall under that category, and how, and hear me out, because I do know that if a realtor, developer does not disclose certain information to a potential buyer or the buyer, then that developer or realtor is subject to a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So how do we keep a check and balance retrospect to everybody being informed moving down the line?
I think that's a good question. But the way that it's proposed now, it would take any doubt away from the realtors. They wouldn't have any responsibility. It would sit with the actual title. So that when you would do a title search, it would pop up. So that it would be the title company that would come in at the sale of the property. An interesting question would be, until during the 9-month period, until that notice is recorded, would that notice that we've already sent out trigger that realtor requirement? I'm not sure of the answer to that, which is why it's proposed the way that it is, to take that gray area away and put it on the title. That basically the title is clouded until it gets resolved.
Okay.
So
And again, regardless of us doing what we've done recently with this, the issue is still 150 odd people who didn't follow the rules in the first place, and are still gonna have to answer to that rule that has always been in place. So it's nothing new that we did, to create this issue. It's still something that they didn't legally, do.
yeah, that's absolutely correct.
And Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, it's just like any other unpermitted improvement somebody does. 'Cause it happens frequently. They'll do decks that should have been permitted that aren't, or they'll do an improvement in a basement that should have been permitted and not. This will fall under that same thing. It's up to the seller to make that
Well,
good. or
and the
buyer to
seller's
buy it.
taking that gamble in hopes
Right.
that the inspector
Correct.
doesn't see it or doesn't look for it.
Right.
But I've not seen an inspector who doesn't catch those things.
Correct.
So,
This is also why when you purchase a home, it's a kind of a pain to pay the extra little bit of money to buy title insurance. But if your title company misses this, and then the city comes and says you shouldn't have done it, then you can go back on the title insurance company and they have to legally help you take care of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
And I know somebody recently who purchased a property and didn't buy it, and man, I'm hoping everything's good on his property.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you hire a title company, yeah.
Right.
That's their only job, is to catch these things like this, yeah.
Right.
okay, and if we went to full enforcement, what happens at that point? So if we don't do the letter, we say, okay, we're not gonna give you a letter.
Yeah.
We just expect you to come into compliance.
Then, sure, yeah.
So we had several meetings on this, and I really appreciate all the staff's time on this. One of the things that we discovered is there's basically two kinds of carports. There's a kind of carport that is more expensive and has a engineer's stamp on it, is that correct?
That's correct.
And they could probably go through regional and get it fairly simple, as long as it's not 9 years old or more. Then there's another kind of carport that is probably the one that most of us would purchase. It's a little less expensive, it looks the same, it's gonna do the same job. It does not have an engineering stamp on it. You cannot go back and get an engineering stamp once you put it up. No structural engineer is gonna come back and do that for you, and it could be pretty expensive. So once we ran into this roadblock, we started talking about what can we do to, in the long run, looking towards the future, make sure these are installed correctly, not over utility lines and easements and different things, and not ones that are gonna fly off when we have the 90-mile-an-hour windstorms and cause a safety issue. And so what can we do, though, so that slowly over time, the people who purchased them recently can have the use of the carport to save their vehicle or whatever. They may not have a garage, it may not be too full, it may be full of treasures. But still have some type of enforcement to keep moving forward on this in the long run. And, I had a senior citizen contact me and to go through the variance process and then, try to get that and then try to go to this and that, and she doesn't have the stamp, it's just gonna be pretty impossible. So we were, a lot of talking to different citizens and listening to what they're saying and saying, okay, there's gotta be some way we can keep moving forward with this, but yet not make it so it's financially and, other ways just impossible for a person to come into compliance. The other thing would be if they took the carport down, right, and then wanted to install a different one, they would then have to follow the new rules. So it's only for this existing structure that's on the property for there's 100 or so people right now.
I know, I respect that, but I go back to, they should have followed the rules again in the first place. We were hammered up here because I stood a hard line on, we have rules for a reason, and we don't bend them because we feel bad for somebody. And you know what? I get that we have our hardships and we have our things and we want to protect what we have. But to give in for one person and everybody else is to follow the rules, I think is wrong. And I think it's obtuse thinking to think that, we're going to change the rules every time someone comes in with a story. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or the word I used earlier, disingenuous, but at the same time, we have these things in place for a reason. It's not to bend them. It's not to break them. It's to protect people on all sides of the equation here. And so, I don't know what the answer is on this one. I really don't. Again, this is regardless of our new code or new regulation here. This should have been taken care of in the first place because there was something that should have been done in the first place. And so I think that's the bigger question and why we're not seeing that. We would ask the same of kids and the way they follow rules, and we should expect the same of adults. Mr. Geek.
Yeah, I want to just add one thing to that. I personally have had that situation where I didn't do what I should have done to begin with. And when I did pull the permits, it cost a whole lot more by doing that. So the guy across the street from me sold his house, and he didn't run a line, didn't pull a permit to run a line, electric line to his hot tub. And so he couldn't sell his house. The guy that bought it didn't want to pay for that, so so I thought, well, rather than take care of that right now, I better make sure everything's good with me. So my basement, I finished my basement, and one of my son-in-laws did the work. When I went to go to the regional building, I had to have about 5 or 6, they had to pull 5 or 6 permits for all the stuff that I did. And so, to me, these people that didn't follow the rules, like I didn't follow the rules like I should have, it costs you. And I understand that there's gonna be people that have problems, but if you did did it the right way, you don't have any issues.
Yeah. It's a tough ask because I don't want to place a burden on somebody because we came up with a new regulation.
It is a tough ask, but I think we got into a tough spot. And I've been on the other side of the counter, you've been on the other side of the counter. You come in and you say, does the city of Fountain have a carport regulation? You get told no. Okay, you call regional building and you say, does the city of Fountain have a carport regulation? They say no. You get hold of a contractor or somebody install it. You ask them if there's any regulation, and you trust them at some point. I had a contractor out just a few weeks ago give me a quote on a patio. It was very explicit up front. I want a quote on a patio cover that's 12 by 40. It's a pretty large patio cover. Said, do include a permit with the quote. He gives me a quote and he says, here's the price. But if you want to pull a permit, it'll be more. So we all know it happens. Some of us have learned by the mistakes we've made and had people try to pull stuff over on us. But, it's very frustrating if some of these people have called and tried to do it what they thought was the right way, and they were told no, and then the conversation didn't go any further. I don't know. I wasn't in planning. I'm not trying to throw planning under the bus. I just know sometimes how conversations go, because you ask the question, you hear the answer you want, and you hang up the phone. You may not go to the second question and say, okay, so anything I build on my property, not everybody does that. But You know, that's why we're trying to kind of come up with a compromise here for these 100 or so people that I believe some of them honestly did call, got the wrong information. They've had contractors, fly-by-night contractors come in one case of several people in a neighborhood, convinced them you didn't need a permit, and, you know, they've laid out a substantial amount of money. Is it perfect? No. You know, but I think it's a compromise that I can live with at this point, rather than, you know, putting some undue stress on people who now have spent $1,500 to $1,800 in some cases on these structures and had them installed, and you know, I think we can work with it. You know, if it becomes unsafe, or it's a public safety, and if they've built the sides all the way down that their neighbors can't see to back out of their driveway, then that's another issue that we deal with. If it's a line of sight issue, they're not gonna probably get a permit if they've blocked the line of sight from their neighbors being able to get in and out safely.
Any public safety issue, regardless, will go through the code enforcement process, any of them.
Okay. Mr. Applegate?
Yeah, I was curious. We give them this 9-month period, and then we grandfather them in, and they don't have to do anything until the sale of the house, one way or another. And then what happens if something drastic does happen after that 9-month period, and they say, well, we're grandfathered in, the city didn't mind, so where do we stand on that?
So, I mean, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I mean, they've gotten a notice, and they will get another notice that they are not in compliance with the law, that their carport does not follow the city fountains regulations. So we're not okay with it. But the question is, how do we then enforce that violation of the law?
That's correct.
And so the enforcement mechanism would be to use that notice, that recording of the notice, to make sure that they can't sell their property without anyone else finding out.
Well, you're probably gonna have some that look okay, but they're not structurally sound. And they're still gonna be standing, and someone could get hurt later.
Yeah, and if they present a public safety concern, but they also, they need to deal with regional building on their own. So if there's something structurally that's not sound, that they're not in compliance with regional building about, and you know,
That's on
regional's
them.
driving through and sees that they are in violation, they can handle it from their side too.
But that would just be an accident for them to drive through. What I'm getting at is, they wouldn't even have to go back to regional building to see if their building was sound or anything. If we just do the 9 months, you're grandfathered in, okay, you have to take care of it before you can sell your house. Then there's nobody to do anything about the structural soundness, security of that building.
And what I would say is the homeowner is responsible for doing that, because we told them that it is not in compliance with the law, and it's their responsibility, right? If it falls over and hits a passerby, that's on them. We told them that it's not in compliance.
See, one of the things that we did when we were asked to look at different options, we wanted to make sure that anything we came up with, we were consistent with regional building. And so we kind of followed, so we're not grandfathering anybody other than what regional building does. And regional building looks at their different permitting timeframes differently. So even if something comes to their attention like these that weren't permitted 10 years ago, they don't run out and do any active enforcement because they see it as the responsibility of the homeowner at that point. So we tried to come up with options that are consistent with theirs so that we were all consistent with that. So this was an option that we're consistent with them, i.e. if somebody comes in since June of 2019, we will follow through with an active enforcement, and we're not grandfathering anybody in because we are putting them on legal notice that they are out of compliance and putting that responsibility back in their court. We are just not going to be actively out abating, having them come in, you know, having 150 court hearings, finding each person and trying to get them to, because really if they haven't, they're going to have to take those down and redo them. So it's more or less coming up with an option that's consistent with that, that we're not going to actively go out and
Who
tear
would
them down.
decide if it's
Regional
unsafe
building
then?
wouldn't either.
Who would actually make the decision if it's unsafe, this can't go on, or, yeah, you're okay for now?
If
You're
our code
you're out of
enforcement, as
compliance,
we've
but you
talked
can
to
go
them,
ahead.
There's some that are obviously unsafe, and anything like those, they've shown some pictures, Christy did, of those that are sitting on blocks and doing those. We'll move forward on any safety or public safety issue. We'll go out and have code enforcement enforce those. The other ones, like over across from Jim's property, I can't remember the name of the street, those folks that had a builder come in and put those up, we've gone out and met with all the different utility folks. They're okay with that. So they would fall under this process and not have to tear those down. So that's two different examples.
The question that comes up, though, is these letters would hold water legally?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're not
And it's-
grandfathered.
And it's something, so regional building does something a little bit similar in certain situations. And so it's something that, I mean, so this kind of model already exists. So
Okay.
it would be easy enough to.
And to be clear, this is not a lien.
Correct.
This is not an OT, a lien on a house.
Correct.
Okay.
You know, the easiest way to handle any of it is to send them to Todd.
Oh, no, please. That's odd. This will
Okay.
help Todd's sanity with 150 of them.
All right. Okay, so the question on the table is, are we okay? So it's either one or two or three on this, right? It's either option 2 is direct staff to record a letter of noncompliance, or 3, direct staff to take another action.
No. This is all one. So all 3 of those or none of them, kind of.
Okay, so this is then just a letter of noncompliance.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
On 100 to 150-ish homes. Nobody who comes in uncompliance, non-compliance now, today, this does not include you.
Nope.
Anybody past June 11th, it does not include you.
Right. They strictly are 1730 applies to them 100%. That's the one we
Right.
passed in June.
So if you were waiting for some magic thing to happen, you can get one in under the radar on June 12th or past, you're not included on this. You need to follow our current standard regulations or whatever we have in place.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to follow our
Right.
standard, our regulations.
Right.
But if you built after what's proposed, if you built after June 11th, code's going to come out. There's going to take you and potentially take it
After
down.
June 11th. Yeah, because again, when we were doing this, everyone thought, oh, let me go buy mine up so I can be grandfathered in, which that wasn't even the intention of that at that point. So, okay. One more thing, Ms. Thompson, so we can.
One last thing.
Action.
If someone has one of these letters and this is the way they're gonna choose to do it, and that's okay, they do the non-compliance, and someone calls in a complaint to code enforcement about it, that just goes through the normal procedures at that point. Okay.
Okay.
So this letter is not, they can't stand around and wave it to anybody and say, the city says I got a letter, I'm okay.
Yeah, so if you have one up now and it's not non-compliant, and you get this letter, and you get a brand new neighbor next door that says, I don't like that, did they do it right? You can't just go waving this in front of them as your ticket to freedom. It's
putting them on notice that they're not following the rules.
right, and this isn't a free pass, basically.
And Christy, you've had several people that came in, wanted to put in new carports, and it's been, with the new people after this regulation passed, it's been fairly simple and straightforward.
In so many words,
Fairly.
yes.
Fairly.
There is a direct path and direction that they would have to move forward in. Whether they choose to do that is entirely up to them.
Okay, so either we accept this resolution tonight and move this one forward, or another option. So I'll leave it open to council to make a decision. Ms. Thompson.
Move to approve?
Mr. Koch.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of this resolution. Please vote.
Councilmember Geek? 7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. All right, that was it on that one. Okay. Item 10, correspondence, comments, and ex officio reports. I'll start with Mr. Trainer. Mr. Evans, Mr. Johnson, you've had enough?
I've had enough.
Okay, Chief Maxon.
We've had 2 very large house fires the last 24 hours. Everybody is safe, however. And it is great the community all came together and that everybody's safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and good job to everybody out there today. Chief Heber.
I'm good, Mr. Mayor, had enough.
Okay, thank you. Sean, anything else on your end? John, anything else? Ms. Martinez?
Just a reminder that the zoning ordinance will be considered at next week's meeting for adoption. So we've had the 2 work sessions with council and 2 work sessions with planning commission, and this is now the final adoption phase.
Okay, and I think we're going to also kind of keep the rest of the agenda light.
Correct.
So that we can really just spend time on this, is that?
Mhm.
Okay. Anything from IT? Nope. Did you have something else? Sorry.
Yes, I did not have enough. I wanted to remind you that myself and Phil Thomas will be judging the Community Talent Show this weekend at the Dean Fletcher Center across from the middle school. We'll be there. Myself and Phil, we did sign up to compete in the comedy show. We did our bantering back and forth. We did not make the cut. So there will be, I tried. I didn't make the cut there either. But we'll have a couple of cops going to compete. Fire department will be there. Police department will be there. It's about the community. We're partnering with New Jerusalem Church, Pastor Daniels and his crew. Should be a good time. We hope to get some people there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Ms. Huffman,
Nothing from me.
can I ask the question about certification?
Absolutely. The county has 21 days following the election for certification. I anticipate swearing in our newest members on December 10th. And at that time, we will decide on mayor pro tem position as well as all of the other alternate committees and boards that our council currently sits on.
Okay, and so since both ladies are here, and if it works out this way, I just, we have other boards and committees that we sit on as well, and we'll need to fill some positions, obviously, because we're losing a couple members, and then if other members want to maybe switch or not be on a certain committee or board, this will be an opportunity to switch things around as well. So we'll be taking care of that as well that night. So that's kind of what she was talking about there. So I'm going to go with council real quickly on this. If there's nothing else, let's move forward. Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Geek, Mr. Applegate, Mr. Koch, Mr. Lauer, Ms. Thompson.
One last thing. John and I went to Fort Carson this last week, and Terrence McWilliams, who a lot of you know in the community, was sworn in to, I'm gonna let you explain it because I'll mess it up, to represent our state as,
Oh, he's the civilian representative to of Southern Colorado to the Secretary of the Army.
okay, so it's a really big deal, and so he'll be representing us, and the Assistant Secretary of the Army was there to swear him in?
Secretary of the
Secretary of the Army. Okay, I was reading up the program as an assistant, so I thought it was the Secretary of the Army. And that was kind of cool and a huge honor for someone who lives in our community and for many, many years and has done a lot and will continue doing a lot to help us. So if you see Terrence, tell him congratulations.
Okay, I have nothing tonight. We do have executive session as well as GID. If it's okay, I wouldn't mind doing GID first, if we can do that, just to get out of the way, and then we can dismiss and go in an executive session. Is that doable?
Sure.
Okay, how should we do that? Adjourn this meeting now?
I need to request the executive session and a
sorry.
regular session. So I'd like to request an executive session pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-4024 for the purpose of review, approval, and amendment of executive session minutes, and an executive session pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-4024E, 2 items under E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and/or instructing negotiators. There is a 3rd executive session that I'm requesting pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-4024A to discuss the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real, personal, or other property interests.
Okay, Mr. Lauer?
I move to go into executive session as requested.
And Mr. Geek?
Second.
Okay, we have motion second for going to executive session. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, and can I adjourn this meeting then? Okay, we are adjourned as a city council. Thank you for attending. Our next meeting is next week, the 19th. We're going to go into GID here in a few moments. Okay. Following the adjournment of the regular city council meeting, the city council shall reconvene as the ex officio board of directors of the Fountain General Improvement District Number 1 for action on the following items. 1, second reading of ordinance number 1737 GID 1, an ordinance of the Fountain General Improvement District Number 1, City of Fountain, Colorado, including certain properties sometimes known as Riverbend Crossing Additions 1 and 2 and is into the City of Fountain General Improvement District Number 1, City of Fountain, Colorado.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. There have been no changes to this ordinance since first reading.
Okay. If no questions, what would the board like to do? Mr. Geek?
I make a motion to approve on second reading, 1737 GID 1.
And Mr. Applegate?
Second.
Mr. Applegate?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second for approval. Please vote.
Councilmember Thompson abstaining. No vote.
I think we're ready. Yeah, we're just about finishing that. Bye-bye. Okay. Bye-bye.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to adjourn as a GID, and we'll take a couple seconds and move into a